Guess while we're waiting, I'll do a mic check. Can everyone hear me? Perfect.
Okay. Tell me if you're okay. All right, thank you for being patient. Sorry about that. We can get started then. And anyone who's watching already, just know that you can dial the 807-3500 number if you have any questions about the budget during the budget hearing. And then our secretary is here to take the questions down, and we'll answer questions at the end of the presentation. So call the meeting to order, Matthew.
Yes, the public session of the regular meeting and the public budget hearing of the Board of Education is called to order at 6:05 p.m. Just need a motion.
So moved.
Krista, and a second.
Second.
Erica, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will now stand for the pledge to the flag.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so in this case, it is the budget hearing. So we are going to go through the adoption of the budget hearing, and this year has been a very different year for us. We would have normally done this early May and then had the vote. I think it was scheduled for May 19th this year, and with all the COVID-19 and the quarantine stay-at-home orders, we weren't sure we were going to have a budget vote this year for the longest time until about the end of April, early May. So at that point, he reset the voting date for June 9th. The board, seeing kind of the future and working with Mr. Montaro and I since December, January on the budget, sort of, wanted to be in a safe spot either way. We weren't sure what was going to happen. So that's what brings us to the budget hearing today that Mr. Montaro will take us through. The other changes that New York State has made this year is that the way school districts across the state report. So we used to do, let's say, a textbook code or education code, and now it has to be textbooks by building, education costs by building. And they're breaking it down, so everybody has to break it into that. So there's a lot more detail than there has been in the past, and Mr. Montaro has done a great job of explaining that to the board and getting us to this point today. So we have a very detailed presentation today, and if you have questions during it, don't feel afraid to stop and ask us. But I know the 7 board members have seen this a few times already. And then we'll have questions and answers for everybody afterwards before we introduce the 4 candidates running for board seats. So with that, we go to 4.1 in our agenda, which is the budget presentation, and Mr. Montaro.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see if we can take over the screen here. All righty. And I think all right. I could still see everybody, so that's good. And I believe you will see just my slides at this point. Presentation, everything good? All right. Thank you very much. So first off, before I begin, I would just like to say this has been an incredibly difficult few months on so many levels, professionally and personally for me. And I would dare say everyone in the community, the state, the country, the globe. There's been so many unprecedented challenges presented to us in a landscape that seems to change daily. The one thing that I can say with great confidence is that the team at North Tonawanda really has risen to the challenges through some great leadership from Mr. Wojtyla, our staff, the administrative team, and this Board of Education in particular. I really have to thank everyone for your support in the North Tonawanda community over the last several months, and the leadership that has been shown by so many in these difficult times, right down to those serving meals on a regular basis to the community. And I think we all take very much to heart the responsibility we have to the students, the staff, the community. And those responsibilities indeed are great, but we have a great team working extremely hard to ensure that the North Tonawanda schools in this district are addressing the needs of the school community with the given resources available. So I really feel this budget is a reflection of that hard work and commitment, and will steward us through the rough waters ahead. So let's see, we can move along. So tonight is the review of the proposed budget in the three-part presentation format. The agenda will be the budget update, the three-part budget and the administrative, capital, and program sections, along with a review of the revenues, the budgetary items, Proposition 1, general fund budget vote, Proposition 2, the use of capital reserve funding, and Proposition 3, additional state aid funding on the energy performance project. And finally, we'll end with the introduction of candidates. So looking at the budget goals, the goals were to stay within the cap, to allocate resources to support district initiatives and the strategic plans. And we have, without a doubt, done that in this budget plan. There is no tax levy increase in this proposed plan, acknowledging the difficulties that everyone is facing in these hard financial times. And we are maintaining program and staff even without an increase in the levy. We are also, move my little mouse over here, keeping pace with technology to improve services. We are continuing to reduce maintenance and utility costs, and we are going to be implementing our fleet replacement plan, again, with no tax levy increase. So how are we doing that? Well, we've developed a very comprehensive technology plan. 10 years out, we are forecasting the needs of the district. The energy performance project we're going to leverage to save on maintenance and utilities costs. And we are going to use reserves from the district savings to provide that fiscal stability and keep those tax levy low and at zero in this particular year. One thing I'd like to say too is that we're not just addressing this year. The way that we are constructing our budgets now, we're building a multi-year approach to achieve long-range stability, which is really the key. You don't budget just for the coming year. You're looking at what are you planning and expecting in those years thereafter to ensure that you don't find yourself in fiscal stress down the road. So the budget increase, the parameters we were looking at before, the parameters typically to keep it between 1% and 3%. We have done that. And the consumer price index, as in previous years, is right around 2% right now. Actually, when this budget was developed, the factor that was used was 1.81%. So you can see the numbers, 2% increase over the 1920 budget, staying within that parameter. The 1920 budget, about $79 million. The 2021 budget, about $81 million. About $1.6 million increase. A majority of that increase, though, is being covered by the reserves. We are seeing some increase in other revenues, but we are using those savings that we created in the capital reserve a year ago to provide that zero levy increase. Tax levy, no change. So 0% change in the tax levy. The three-part budget in the administrative, capital, and program format. So the administrative side of things, these are all the areas that component of the budget supports: the Board of Education, the administration of benefits in our health insurance programs, special items including insurance, legal, and BOCES administration of programs. We have the administrative staff and the central services, so printing equipment, supplies, and those administrative components that are also related to BOCES services, primarily our networking. So you can see on the administrative component side a variety of areas that are all increasing this year. One in particular is decreasing personnel administration. So the increases that you see here largely are due to contractual agreement increases. So we have agreements with all the different bargaining units, and everyone is seeing, their contractual increases based upon those agreements. We also have rising costs associated with BOCES services, and any decreases usually are due to retirements and shifting in staff. There were a number of retirements, so the increases, although most budget lines are increasing, which you will see typically every year, some are not increasing at such a great rate because we did have a lot of retirements in this particular year, and that's also helping us keep that tax levy low. Now, specifically the increase in benefits on those budget lines, we are just anticipating in the coming year, medical claims and expenses, related pharmaceuticals, along with third-party management fees are all going to increase. Just given the dynamics going on right now, there is a planned increase there, and that is impacting our administrative budget. In terms of the capital portion, that supports the operation of the plant, special items like our projects and transportation, and also the management of facilities. In this budget, this is where we saw a lot of our efficiencies come through and are reflected in the budget plan through that energy performance project, with work being done on boilers, LED lights, all driving to save the district money on not only utility usage, but also on future maintenance, because we will be upgrading our equipment. The other thing that is very important to note is that on this portion of the budget, we have a number of areas that are aided by state aid, additional state aid, which is very important because this is going to be the mechanism through which we are going to increase our aid in coming years. Foundation aid, which is based on enrollment in other areas, that is predicted in future years to see some decreases due to the financial instability of Wall Street and just the COVID-19 event. But the expenses that we have on capital projects and transportation and the improvements in the energy performance are all supported by expense that can be calculated and that we can definitely count on next year. So the energy efficiency is not only going to help our operating expenses, it's also going to increase our aid and generate aid next year, which is very, very important in this budget and the passage of this budget. So the energy performance, it's a, oops, sorry about that. Got a little trigger happy. So the project overview, it's about $5.3 million. You can see the annual energy savings and the annual or the utility rebate starting out. We also are going to save on operational and maintenance components due to the fact that we'll have new equipment, less service required. And we do have a guaranteed savings with our contractor, which is Danforth, who is highly respected throughout the community. And they've done just an outstanding job with the plans and everything up to this point. Very, very happy with that particular contractor. Also, the project proposals to improve some of our failing facilities in terms of playgrounds We did a fairly extensive evaluation of the playgrounds, especially the one at Spruce Elementary, and it was in some dire need of improvement. And given the fact of the condition, the state will aid this project also in the site improvements. And this 100K capital outlay project has been established by SED so we can do these modest upgrades for things like playgrounds. And in particular, in this project, we are looking to fund control rooms and that associated site work. So the control rooms are those related to the technology plan in which we're going to improve our switches, our ventilation in those rooms, and just to ensure that our wiring is also sufficient to provide the technical services to the students and the devices and other things that we're using as part of instruction. And again, this generates state aid. On the program side, all the things that you would think would be supported by a program are, so student program needs, supplies, materials, technology, teacher training, equipment. We have our students with disability programs, and then our classroom instructional staff and our athletics and co-curriculars are all supported in the program portion of the budget. As you can see, again, many increases on this side of the budget. One decrease in benefits because this portion of the budget doesn't take into account some of those pharmaceutical and pieces that we took a look at on the administrative side. So we're saving a bit there. But again, in general, the increases are due to contractual agreements, rising costs of BOCE services. If there were retirements and shifting of staff, that would cause some of the decreases that you see there. Specifically, the one thing I do want to note is that the large increase, relatively larger increase in instructional media budget on that budget line is for the implementation of the long-range technology plan, ensuring that the district students are provided with those one-to-one devices and technology opportunities to enhance learning. And we've seen those leveraged, obviously, during this COVID event. So those have become even more important to support in the budget going forward. Given the fact that our IT infrastructure is going to need to respond to maybe potential future events. So that comprehensive technology plan, again, it's addressing the backbone, the security, and just the capacity of the district network along with those devices, making sure that they work appropriately for students in those technology and instructional spaces. And also this plan has been designed for a look out 10 years. So it's very comprehensive, very detailed, and we will be utilizing this for a smart schools project that will be upcoming at some point in time. In terms of the summary positions to support initiatives around the district, we've seen the need for social workers and counselors. So this budget does support that. Unfortunately, the community schools aid that we had seen at one time is no longer there, with state aid staying flat. The other item that is supported in here is one coaching position that we're anticipating as potential need, this based upon student interest. And then also a microcomputer specialist, which really is a wash because we are seeing a decrease on the BOCE side because this was supported by a BOCE staffer at one point in time. But we decided to take this particular position and bring it in-house. So we have this person 5 days a week as opposed to the sharing of that BOCE's computer specialist in the past. So I have gone through a number of slides and I probably should have stopped maybe a little bit more often to see if there's any questions at this point. Are there any questions at this point before I go further? No? Okay. So the expenditure, straight out of the budget newsletter. So we look at the vast majority of our expenditure is related to instruction. We are service and support heavy. Obviously, employee benefits related to those instructional staff is another large portion of the budget. Other significant areas, debt service. So that's the foundation of the budget in terms of the capital projects. Now that debt service, on the opposite side of it, we have state aid that's supporting a lot of those pieces. So in general, the budget is mostly reflective of those costs related to staff. Now, one thing that we do need to be mindful of is the fact that there is a very distinct possibility that this budgetary plan, and again, every budget is a plan of what we expect to happen at this time, but it may require some significant shifts due to potential responses to the continued COVID-19 events and mandates from the state. But this budget does reflect the best plan that we have and what we know now on June 2nd. In terms of revenue, again, we see some increases, some more significant than others in some of the line items. What we do see is that the tax levy is held at a zero increase. So I think that's very important to the voters, and to note that, we are, putting together this budget and utilizing savings to provide some relief to the community in this time. And really part of the use of reserves was planned all along, and specifically for transportation, because that is going to generate aid. So there were a lot of strategic things that we had in place prior to COVID that were really very helpful, quite honestly, in developing this budget and feeling pretty assured that we are going to be able to address those losses in revenue potentially down the road because of all the savings that we are looking at leveraging. So the one thing that we do want to note here, again, 0% levy, and that is largely due to the use of reserves. So we're using the district savings, and it's funding that capital purchase. The proposition number 2, the purchase of buses, is the primary focus of that use of reserves, although we are using some reserves on the debt side also to offset the levy. Aid, essentially from the state, is flat right now. Prior to the COVID-19 adjustment, we were potentially in line for a $473,000 increase in state aid payable. So that loss of aid was essentially the impetus for us using those reserves and to keep the tax levy low. One concern that we have going into the year, obviously, are those mid-year cuts. So if you see our projected revenues, largely funded by state aid, and property tax is the other very large portion. Now, this year in particular, reserve use is increased, so that's a bigger piece of the pie. So the concern here, though, again, is further significant mid-year budget cuts, which could result in a substantial use of fund balance. Again, more district savings because of that adjustment in state aid payable. So in the end, it might be impossible to continue to maintain programs as currently planned. And there might be some cuts that we need to make to avoid spending more of the district savings than we had planned. If you look at the tax levy and rates, pretty straightforward this year because we're looking at a 0% change. Proposed 0% tax levy increase, so zeros across the board. The one thing that could happen, depending on assessments, which are determined over the summer, is the tax levy rate could actually decrease if assessments increase, because the shifting of the assessments would shift around how much everyone's tax bills would change. So that could be something that the effective change in your taxes might be a reduction from this year based upon assessments. Proposition 1. So what will you see on the ballot? The general fund budget proposition for a budget to be approved at $81,016,940, which represents a 0% proposed tax levy increase. Proposition 2, the transfer of capital reserve funds for the acquisition of those school buses that are currently leased as part of our fleet. So quite a few buses. We're talking about 21 large 66 passenger type C buses, 2 type A small buses, and 1 type A wheelchair bus. So again, sorry about that. So again, we're making this expenditure for the services in transporting students, and this is part of a long-term comprehensive fleet plan that we have in place So not only on the technology side do we have a long-term plan, but also on the fleet side, we have a long-term plan to provide budget stability. So every year, we're not going to be looking to purchase 24 buses. Typically in the plan, it'll be 2 or 3 going forward. And we'll rotate out the buses that we can then trade in for value, again, to make sure that we're not holding on the buses that are going to just have more and more increased maintenance costs. So Proposition 2, one thing to really note here is that, again, this expenditure is aided. We're using savings to make this purchase. And the best part of this, as I noted in the yellow box there, is that the savings that we're using are going to come back to us on that $1 spent, 79 cents will come back to us, back to our savings, and we'll get to use that again in future years, and it will drive more aid to the district, even in a time when we might see a decrease in foundation aid. Proposition 3 is related to the energy performance project that has already been approved by the board. So we will be moving forward on it. But if the voters also approve the project, we will get an additional 10% in state aid. So this is a win-win. We are not only going to save on maintenance and energy costs, but we can generate an additional 10% in state aid guaranteed on the value of the project. So really, this one is very critical to long-term financial health of the district because we're going to be getting more aid, and it's going to be coming from the state and not local tax dollars. So, very key proposition here in terms of the capital piece. So the challenges ahead, we always have the challenges with staff and negotiating contracts and benefits and tuition for out-of-district programs. On the appropriation side, but COVID-19 really, we don't know. There could be a number of different expenses that we just aren't anticipating because we just don't know what September is going to look like. So that's added an additional, level of uncertainty. But again, budgets are plans and they are designed to be flexible. So we may have to make some adjustments. On the revenue side, those mid-year cuts are still looming. A lot depends on what happens on the federal level. So we just are not sure at this time. But one thing that we are doing is we're keeping the tax levy low, and actually in this year at a 0% increase. We're using appropriated fund balance more than likely, and we will be using reserves. And these are all planned spending. But again, those will be challenges down the road because we do not want to continually expend out of the savings. They are rainy day funds, but they will only last for so long. So it's not a sustained source of revenue. Now, should the budget fail and we go to a contingency budget, the second vote, got to be honest, not quite sure what will happen given that we are so close to the end of the month and not really sure what the state is going to do if budgets do fail.
We talked about that with the senator as well as the other district superintendents, and the governor would have to set that. It's usually, within 3 weeks of the last one, but 3 weeks takes us into July. So you're trying to get it set for that month already. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, just explain a little bit about the restrictions under a contingency, because we're at 0, so there's really no need to go for another vote, except that there are restrictions in a contingency.
Right. So I'll just go right to that next slide, because that is the key point, is what do we stand to lose? So in a contingent budget, 0% increase. Well, we're already there. And the board would evaluate what ordinary contingent expenses are. So we would look through the budget lines and kind of determine, well, what's ordinary expenses that we would say are also contingent expenses. But I think the biggest piece here in this budget in particular is it removes all capital and equipment expenses. So what we would have a very difficult time with then is navigating the purchase of the fleet of buses. And then the capital project and the work that we're doing, we wouldn't be able to follow through on the 100K project or the capital improvement project with some of the improvements around the district. So that would be very detrimental because some of those things we're leveraging not only to drive more state aid because of those projects, but also because there will be needed improvements that we just won't be able to do. And we probably would have to try to work out some type of last minute agreement with leasing those buses for a longer term. So it would really cause some difficulty, to say the least.
But it is possible that the budget could be voted no, the buses could be voted yes, and the electrical project could be voted no. I mean, there's kind of a menu, but we don't want to be in our contingency budget, because if those of you who've been around long enough to remember this, is when you're in contingency budget, then you can't let anyone use the facilities. You have to charge for the facilities. There's all different things. There's no equipment purchases that are not planned for already or approved for by voters. So it does tie us up a little bit.
Yeah, it does add a level of complexity in a year where more complexity is not needed. And I think the biggest thing is we lose the advantage of the state aid on those capital expenditures. And that's really what's going to help us keep those taxes low going forward. So in closing, we have a budget increase of 2%, but that 2% is just a 0% tax levy, and that is via the use of reserves. Proposition 2, important piece to note here, is that we are using our savings to keep the levy at 0 to make that bus purchase of those fleet of buses. And Proposition 3 is to get additional funding on the energy performance project that's going to drive more state aid to the district, again, to keep the levy low on that project that's going to have future reductions in maintenance and costs.
On Proposition 2, the voters approved us creating the savings for the busing. So you can't really use that savings to lower taxes. You can't use that savings in Proposition 2 to hire more teachers or whatever. It's really was put in a reserve, a savings account for transportation and the purchase of buses. So, but it requires voter approval to let you do that. So I want people just to be clear on that. It's not like if we weren't buying the buses, we could use that money somewhere else. It's a very specific savings account just for that.
Correct. So on to essentially my last slide here. The annual election and budget vote is to be conducted by absentee ballot. In order to be counted, the ballot must be received by the district clerk at the Board of Education building on 176 Walk Road in North Tonawanda no later than 5 p.m. on June 9th, 2020, election day. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Mr. Whitesville?
Yes. So we will address the article and the issue that a number of districts are having with the ballots getting out, and then that worry. So the company that we used, I feel, felt overwhelmed, but didn't let us know until the last minute. But we have good news that Mr. Montaro talked with the post office and that they were in circulation today, which means that they will be out for delivery tomorrow. So that's good. So we encourage people to take a minute as soon as they get those to read through it, put their vote in. They can just put it right back in their mailbox on their house for pickup on Thursday and get that back to us, or drop it in any mailbox in the city. We also are going to have a drop box outside the ad building at 176 Walk Road that people can drop it off at any time as well. If they are a little bit worried about it getting lost in the mail or something, that way it'd be right here on our doorstep. That should be installed and ready to go for Thursday, which means people can vote on the weekend then and stop by and drop it in the box. And we'll be monitoring that with cameras, as well as coming to empty it at several times throughout the day to make sure that there's room if people want to use that to vote. So it was not ideal when the governor sort of gave everybody 30 days for a new election vote and then said it will all be by mail. It's never been done before. So between COVID-19 going on and those companies who do the printing and the stacking and that, having a reduced workforce already, and now every district basically who use them quadrupling or more their mail out ballots, we got into this little bit of a bind. But I feel like they put the pedal to the metal over Saturday and Sunday, and they were taking deliveries, and the NT ballots were in the post office on Monday, circulation today, which means they'll be out for delivery tomorrow. So watch for that. Please take a minute to vote. Drop it in your mailbox at your house for them to pick up the next day, or take it to any post office or mailbox in the city. And also 176 Walk Road will have a drop box outside on the weekend. And there's also one inside if you're coming during office hours, if you're more comfortable with that, from 7:30 to 4 every day. It can be dropped in the vestibule in the secure lockbox there too. So there's plenty of ways to get your vote in, and it'll only take you a minute to drop it off.
Okay. So before we board members.
So, before we do that, I'm going to remind people watching that they can call 807-3500, and then it'll prompt you for option 4. But again, you can call in with any questions and we'll answer those in a few minutes. It's 807-3500, option 4, once you get in. And the next part on that, Mr. Kennedy, is 4.2, the notice of the budget hearing.
Yep.
If we could read that and take a motion, then we'll go into the other piece.
Absolutely. I hereby give notice of a budget hearing. Advance public notice will be given as legally required by school districts. I just need a motion.
So moved.
Zach, and I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, so we have an introduction of the board candidates next, and the ruling when the governor through COVID-19 moved our election date and the mail-in ballot was that we would go in alphabetical order, because there's usually a random drawing for the ballot order. But he said it would go in alphabetical order, and that's how we will introduce our candidates today. So this screen, Mr. Halusko, I would like to come down so that the person speaking has the full screen. Thank you. And we're going to start with Jeremy Furtz, and he will introduce himself and then talk to you for 3 to 5 minutes about why he is a glutton for punishment, maybe. Why is he running for the board, right? So, all right, Jeremy, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. And hello, North Tonawanda. First, I'd like to say that my prayers are out for all our law enforcement, and I'm really hoping for a united and safe country in these crazy, crazy times. Again, my name is Jeremy Gertz, and I want your vote for school board. I was born and raised here in North Tonawanda, and I'm a veteran of the United States Army. My wife and I are raising our 3 daughters here, and all 3 of them go to North Tonawanda schools, my oldest being a senior this year, so you can imagine what we've been going through in my household. The reason that you should vote for me is, number one, I am the only parent that's running. I'm the only one really that has any skin in the game, so to speak. I have the same problems that the parents do. I have to go to all my children's events, and I get to talk to the teachers, and it's part of my life. It's not really an obligation at this point. It's part of who I am and what I do. I'm a father first, and I really love what I've seen my girls be able to get out of the school. And I really want that for every kid. I talk to a lot of girls and boys that come through my home, and I don't think a lot of the kids are taking advantage of everything that this district has to offer. And I'd really like to see that for all the kids that are in our district. I really want to be fair. I don't have an agenda. I'm not really doing this for any reason other than I run the boosters for the girls basketball team. I'm the head chowder dad for the girls volleyball team. And a lot of times after work, I'd show up in a suit and people would start asking me questions. And I'd say, I just sell pizza and Swedish fish here. I don't have those answers. And enough parents came up to me and teachers that I spoke with and said, you would be great at this, and your heart's in the right place. And if you care about all the students as much as you care about your own girls and the well-being of this community, then it's a no-brainer. So that's pretty much why I threw my hat in the ring. Like I said, the reasons you should vote for me is, number one, I'm a parent. I have a very good thumb on the pulse of what's going on in the schools. When I hear the rumors on Facebook and stuff, I can go right to my kids. I can go right to the teachers and hear what's really going on in the schools. Number two, I'm a veteran. The last time the world was turned upside down and really shaken by its ankles, from my recollection, was September 2001. And at that time, I was a squad leader in the 3rd Infantry Division. Not to say that's apples to apples with what the school board does, but it shows that under chaotic times and unknowns that I can keep my cool and lead people. Number three, I'm a lumberjack. I'm always going to be a lumberjack, and that's just you can't take it out of me. So when it's time to vote, I ask that you think about what's important to you, and hopefully it's the same things that are important to me: being involved in the school as a parent, and being a veteran, and caring about North Tonawanda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good to get to know everybody in this format too. I like it very much. Hope everybody watches either now or they're watching it again in the future to get to know everybody. Next, we have Matthew Kennedy.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Jeremy, for giving us a little intro about yourself. My name is Matthew Kennedy. I'm a lifelong resident, proud class of 2009 NTCSD graduate, homeowner, and current Board of Education president. My wife, Allie, and I reside on Christiana Street. I currently work for Ingram Micro in Williamsville, New York as a technical account manager. There I'm responsible for building networks and high-performance computing fabrics for small businesses and large enterprises. It's really been the honor of my lifetime to serve our community in these last 3 years on the Board of Education. During my tenure, I have proudly supported the expansions in arts, counseling services, the completion of the Fine Arts Center, and capital improvement projects. I've also supported school safety improvements that include a visitor management system, additional camera installation, and the addition of a school resource officer. I have also supported and voted for 3 district budgets below the tax cap. If reelected, I will continue to implement best practices to avoid staff and classroom cuts, while finding ways to close budgetary gaps. I believe that the tax levy is not the only solution for a sound physical footing for the district. I believe in green initiatives that not only pay for themselves over 10 years, but will reduce the overall usage and lower the carbon footprint for our district. I have also supported our board joining the New York State School Board Association. They are a statewide voice of nearly 2.7 million children. I recently had the opportunity to represent North Tonawanda and Albany to advocate for our students on all matters affecting their education. If reelected, I will continue to advocate for our students at the state and federal level. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I have tuned into each and every weekly update webinar that NISA has provided for school board members, and I've continued to pass that information on to the rest of our board members and our administration. I bring a lot of experience to the table. Over the past 3 years, I have learned so much and have always handled situations brought to my attention with the utmost care and focus. If I was not able to provide an immediate response to a situation, I would make sure to pass that information to the appropriate channels. I am extremely dedicated to what I do here, as I have served both the students and the families along with the community as a whole. I am very open-minded to new ideas as they are presented to me, and I'm always looking for ways to improve our district, which I feel is important. Beyond my involvement in the NT School Board, I've also been an active volunteer in the NTHS Parent Alumni Group for the choral department for the last 11 years. We have uncertain times ahead with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we'll need experienced leaders to guide the district through these unprecedented times. If reelected, I will continue to work tirelessly to provide every student the tools that they need to be successful and go out and change the world. I hope to be able to serve our district and community for another term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Very nice. Very well done. It's nice to you forget all the things we've done over the last 3 years, right? It's nice to hear what we've been working on. We get so involved in what's happening today. Next is Zachary Nemec.
Thanks, Greg. Good evening, North Tonawanda. I first want to start by recognizing our great faculty and staff for their hard work in educating and providing for our students during the shutdown period. And I also want to commend Greg as our superintendent for his hard work and dedication to the district. Quite honestly, I'm not sure how you found a moment to rest since March, because you've been there to answer every call, question, and concern, and have become a local Facebook Live celebrity. But I also want to say thank you to the class of 2020, and I want to apologize to them as well. My words won't wash away their disappointment, with many of them feeling that they have missed out on classic coming of age activities. I'm sorry that we can't do more at this juncture to give you those experiences that you're looking for. And it's true that you've made sacrifices. By missing those events, you've made sacrifices that have potentially saved lives, and that makes you leaders. This will never be forgotten. The class of 2020 will always be one of historic proportions. It is safe to say that this school year has been most unique we've ever experienced, and for many of us, confusing, intimidating, and even possibly scary at times. With such drastic changes, especially during a global pandemic, there's ample room for uncertainty. And one thing I want to make certain is that your school board trustees are here to serve you, to guide you, and to guide our children through this tough time, as we have over the years, and we continue to do so. During my tenure, I've worked hard to best exemplify reliability, dedication, and passion for the education of our youth. I've worked with my colleagues to make sure fiscally responsible decisions on budgetary issues have been made to ensure that our children are getting the most out of what we have to offer. I've been an advocate for expansions in art, additional curriculum, improved business first rankings, and preparing our students for life after high school. These are goals that I have strived for and carried out with the future of our children in mind. While there is much pressing going on in the world, I don't want to take too much time, but I would like to also remind people of some of my other involvement in the area. I am a member of the North Tonawanda Academy of Business and Finance Board. I am a member of the Niagara County Youth Board, and I am also a board member of the Niagara County SPCA. Tonight, I'm asking for your vote to continue serving for another 3 years. If reelected, I plan on further emphasizing new technology and technology courses with the implementation of additional STEAM and STEM programming. I also want to continue my support for readers, writers, and math workshop programs that have shown great success and promise for our students. I will continue my fight for safety in our schools and carry on my advocacy for a second school resource officer as well. Leadership is more important now than ever. On election night 3 years ago, I was told that this position is not always full of sunshine and rainbows. While that may be true at times, I couldn't be prouder of working with the other 6 board members to collectively move this district forward. And with uncertainty building about future aid from the state and faces on the dais may change, I'm confident in this abilities board to work together with both the students and residents' interest at heart. I think it is important to note that the kids are our future, and I want to ensure that they get there eager, ready, and prepared. During times like this, there's an emphasis on the importance of leadership. Today's students are our leaders of tomorrow. And with your support, I will continue to do everything within my capability as your school board trustee to facilitate their achievements and spearhead their success. I would like to end on this, and maybe to my English teachers of past demise, of one of my favorite poets, a quote, and it's by Lord Alfred Tennyson, because I feel like it fits the current situation of the world. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are now not that strength that in which old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive to seek and to find and not to yield. North Tonawanda will never yield, and it will never stop moving forward. Stay healthy, stay safe, love the neighbor, and good night, North Tonawanda.
Thank you, Zach. Very nice summary and quote there. And it's always on our mind about our seniors this year. I know we were talking about all the things that they're missing out and how we can make it special for them. So thank you for mentioning them as well. All right. And our final candidate running this year is Jacob Quinn. You're next.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for giving me that nice introduction. I hope everyone's having a good day. For those who don't know me, my name is Jacob Quinn, and I'm running for the office of the North Tonawanda School Board. I'm 23 years old and a lifelong resident of North Tonawanda, and I would not have it any other way. I'm currently entering my senior year at Buffalo State College for political science and pre-law, so school is very important to me. North Tonawanda is a city like no other. The friendships and the bonds I made growing up on 14th Avenue shows the true character of what this community really is about. If I had to put North Tonawanda into 3 words, those 3 words that come to mind would be hardworking, family, and compassion. When one person in this community hurts, we all hurt. A lot of people ask me why I'm running for school board and what do I think I could offer the school district. This is a very fair question to be asked, but to understand, let me express my opinions of my high school experience. High school was difficult for me. I had low ambition and did not receive the attention and support from the teachers and staff that was crucial to my development. Due to this, I took it upon myself to drop out during my senior year and pursue a GED. After getting my GED, I decided to enroll at Niagara County Community College, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. These instructors and professors opened my eyes and made learning appealing and exciting for me, something that I never experienced in high school. There are probably over 100 kids in the high school right now who experience what I've experienced. They cannot be left behind. I want to be a part of the solution and inspire children to appreciate education. I can be part of the solution. I will do everything in my power to assist the school board for the greater good of this education. My daughter is one of the greatest motivators for me to run at school board. The love I have for my daughter is immeasurable. My daughter will be entering the Universal Pre-K program in the fall of 2021, and her education is one of the most important things in my life and hers. You see, at the end of the day, I want my daughter to look back at this, run for school board, as to look at like a love story. I want her to say, wow, my dad tried his very best and did everything he could do for my education. It's hard for people to understand the concerns of a parent when they do not have their own. Decisions I will be making will also affect my child and your child as well. And to be honest, I won't vacate my spot for a seat on the Common Council or for the county legislator. Why? Because my daughter's education is the most important than both those offices combined. The school board is no place for politics as usual. This is for my child and nothing else. Let's choose a candidate whose child can hold them accountable. Thank you for your time, and God bless everybody.
Thank you very much, Jacob, a fellow 14th Avenue Gilmore graduate that Mr. Halesko and I are proud to have, with Gabby here as well, was our Gilmore graduate, and she's a board member. So we've got some great alumni coming out of the Gilmore School building and all over the district, really. Just a testament to the good work that parents and teachers and educators do here, because you're all giving back in one way or another. So thank you for serving and thank you for running, and I wish you all the best of luck. So with that said, and a board of candidates, I'm going to see if our illustrious clerk has any calls in. No calls in for our budget. So she is still here though, and we're going to go into our regular meeting. So the way this format works is that we close the budget hearing and then we open, make a formal, and we'll start the regular meeting, and there will be a place for people to call in with general comments at the end as well. So to all the board members here, your job, running or elected or not yet, is to give people the information they need on the budget. Make sure they know that they can drop ballots off here at Walk Road. Make sure they should get them in the mail right away. And if they have questions, we're here and happy to walk them through the budget or to answer any questions they have about why one line grew and another line shrunk, or anything that they're seeing online. So all this is posted online, so it's a very good resource. And it's a very different year for all school districts. And in the school districts that the ballots were out already, they're seeing a higher return than their highest vote in the last 10, 15 years already. And there's still a week to go. So that means we're going to have a lot of people voting, and we want them to vote and count every vote that we can get. So thank you, Jeremy and Jacob. We're going to ask you to log out now and leave the meeting. If you just hover over it, you should leave the meeting. And then we're going to take action, Mr. Kennedy, 4.4.
All right. Thanks, Jeremy and Jacob. We appreciate your time tonight. All right, everyone. We'll be on 4.4. I hereby close this budget hearing. I just need a motion.
So moved.
All right, Zach, and a second.
Second.
All right, Krista, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. We'll go to 5.1 on page 3. The regular Board of Education meeting will continue and start at, looks like 6:58 p.m. Just need a motion.
So moved.
All right, Colleen, and I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, so we'll jump right into our agenda. So at 6.1, is recommend the Board of Education approves the agenda order as presented, or are there any additions, deletions, or changes? All right, not seeing any, just need a motion.
So moved.
All right, Colleen, and a second?
Second.
All right, Eric, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries, and we're gonna go to 7.10 on page 6. All right, it is recommended the Board of Education approves the consent agenda as recommended by the Superintendent of Schools. I just need a motion.
So moved.
Zach, in a second.
Second.
Gabby, all right, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. And we'll be at 8.1 is recommended the Board of Education approves the personnel agenda as presented, or are there any additions, deletions, or changes? I'm just gonna make one adjustment to that we pull 9.3 for a separate vote. That's a retirement, so I just wanna make sure we do that separately.
Okay.
So just need a motion for everything in section 9 minus 9.3.
So moved.
All right, Colleen, in a second.
Second.
Krista, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. And we'll go to 9.7 on page 8. And then we'll go back to 9.3. Is recommended the Board of Education approves all personnel in section 9 minus 9.3 as presented. Just need a motion.
So moved.
All right, in a second.
Second.
Eric, all in favor? You got that motion?
Yep, I got it.
Aye. Motion carries. And we will go back to 9.3. Sorry, Mr. Orsil, if I'm going to mess up your sheet here, but I figured we wanted to call out that I saw the retirement in there.
You're going to have to talk to Debbie.
Sorry there, Debbie. Just figured we wanted to honor this long service. So we'll go to 9.3 and we'll take it as a separate item. It is recommended the Board of Education accepts the letter of resignation for the purpose of retirement from Ruth Mahoney from her position as typist effective June 30th, 2020. Ruth has been an employee of the district since 1984. So just wanted to make sure we call that out as a separate. That's a great deal of service to our schools. Just need a motion.
So moved.
All right, Colleen, and I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
We wish Colleen Ruth all the best, and as Colleen did the motion, Ruth all the best. Yes, and 1984 was a very special year in the district. So she started in a very good year.
I wonder why.
It's a very good senior class that year.
All right, so we're at 10.1. So I don't know if you wanted to walk us through that. That's it.
Yeah, so 10.1, the sports and athletic program review. There's two, there's 7420 and 7512. So a couple of things are happening. Because two things are happening at once, and these policies are adjusting to kind of allow both. So if there are fall sports, the governor, and there's been a kind of a decree that they can start and have to get their physical that, because usually this would be the time we'd be scheduling physicals so that they're ready for the fall. And since schools weren't open, those weren't done. So the first thing is that we would accept their old physical, that they've had one if they are starting. And the idea is that if sports are allowed to start in the fall, then doctor's office and physicals would be allowed at some, kind of portion to come back into the building to help them, or they can go to their doctors. So that's going to happen regardless in the fall. So people don't have to worry about, I got my physical, I didn't get my physical. The other piece that is trying to make it a little bit easier is that we have gone back and forth on this, who can do the physical. And there were some cases downstate where, my uncle is a doctor and he wrote it for me because I really wanted to play soccer, but I have a small heart condition and I really shouldn't be, but I really want to, so my uncle let me, and then something happens and the school district's liable. So what the change is that while we still encourage everybody to do the district physician, which is Wheatfield Peds, which is a contract we renew in July, so that could change. But if it doesn't, they would have to sign off and look at and review another doctor's physical, but we could accept it. but it's not just going to be accepted from the doctor's office, right? Right carte blanche. That we would have to, if they have a question or they don't like one of the numbers in it, they can call the other doctor and say, how'd you get this number? Are you concerned about this number? It's, right on the limits or something like that. So in 7420 and 7512, those two address that, and those would be the major changes for the fall. And then going forward, that the district physician, we could accept another physician's receipt that they had their physical, but our doctors would have to sign off on it, which will help out a little bit, because there's always those people who forget at the last minute, and then our physicians can't get them in, or they just had it with theirs and we won't accept theirs. And so that should get some of that drama and phone calls away from us when, and we all agree that more kids involved in sports and after school activities is better. So we want to do that, but at the same time, we have to keep them safe. So if you want to look at them, we can, or we could take a vote on them, because the gist and the safety pieces are all the same. It's just those two changes I mentioned. Any questions on that? I mean, Colleen, you're the doctor's medical background.
No, it sounds, whose responsibility will it be to get the outside physician's physical to our physician? Is it the child's? Is it the family?
So yeah, so when that happens, the mother and the child would bring it into the nurse at the school, because that's how they're the nurse is making sure they're up to date, that they can practice, and then they would fax it to the doctor.
Okay, that makes sense. That's much easier. Okay.
Yeah, because they do that right from the beginning, because kids will be there for tryouts or whatever, but not necessarily doing the practice, and they tell the coaches, Colleen doesn't have her physical yet, so she can come and listen, but no practices yet. And then when they get it, they let the coaches know so that they're safe.
Sounds good.
All right then. Matthew, you want to read 10.1 is recommended?
Yep. It is recommended the Board of Education approves the revised version of policy 7420, sports and the athletic program as presented. Just need a motion.
So moved.
Krista, in a second.
Second.
All right. Colleen, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll flip the page there to 10.2. It is recommended the Board of Education approves the revised policy of 7512, student physicals as presented. Just need a motion.
So moved.
All right, Krista, and a second.
Second.
All right, Eric, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, motion carries.
All right, so the board goals, I don't know if they can come up. We reviewed them at the last meeting, and the board will be meeting very shortly in June to sort of look at their how we've done on these, what we want to tweak for going next year, as well as then in July, if we have new board members or not, we will set a retreat date to kind of go forward. So a big piece that I think we'll want to be looking at, we had a big piece about community engagement and notifying them, and COVID-19, if there's a positive in it, really kind of pushed us in that direction to do a little bit more reaching out, I feel, in a number of ways. So the Facebook Lives have been very well received. The videoing of these board meetings, which, by the way, I told you at the last one that these virtual meetings can only continue if there's an executive order, and there is one on the table, but he didn't approve it yet to see if he's going to allow it. Because right now you're not supposed to have groups of more than 10, and us as a group with Debbie and myself and Patrick and Tony, we're at 10. So you're really not allowing public in. So we think he may extend it through July until we get back to like a stage 3 of opening. So in the process of all this, we had more press releases, and that has been interesting because that Tonawanda Extra we used to get isn't coming anymore. And so we're relying more on the Buffalo News and the Niagara Gazette, which I think there might be a way to still get those out, but kind of know that that's not the way most people are getting their news in today's day and age, and maybe doing something a little bit more of a blast out. One of the things that have been working on through this, which fits into the board goals that we might want to incorporate for next year, is because teachers have had to use technology more to communicate with parents and students. Mr. Halesko had put out a sheet to sort of say to teachers, what are you using? And there's a dual reason for that, is that we have to make sure the information when they're using something is secure. So if you find an app and you start using it, it's not secure. Someone could, tap in and get into information. The other piece is that we want to streamline it. So every year parents don't have to use a new system. Well, this teacher used, XYZ, this teacher's using ABC, this teacher uses, DEF. So we're trying to streamline that for the district, but it would also be another way then that I could get access to notify parents, because they would be used to that with their teachers. So that might be another format that we haven't even thought of yet for getting that out. The challenge still is to get the community at large who don't have maybe students in the school district to link into these online things, and how do we reach them. The global calls only reach parents because those are the ones we have their numbers for. So this is an interesting problem I think all districts deal with, but I think we're doing a great job on that. The safety plans will be out for them to review, and we're tweaking them now in-house to share with the board for July. So that's coming, as well as then everything that goes with safety. Can we do another SRO? What's it going to look like? We talked about the bus cameras are probably more on bus cameras than the bus stop cameras, because that's been a little bit quiet now on that front for a little bit, and how those are used and how they're billed and how that happens. So the board will review these goals to see if we need to keep them because of certain things. We were very close to getting a second SRO until all this COVID-19, and then the budget got frozen at last year's basically funding level from the state because of the problems that we're having. And then Mr. Fisher has got this for us. I got to get him in here. The next board meeting too, we have the SARS dinner, which are the top 3 from the class of 2020, get the glass buffalo. And we just got notification today that the buffaloes are ready to be picked up and can be delivered. So I think that might be nice to invite the students on, even if it's by Zoom, and we'll have Mr. Fisher. And then we'll also talk about some of the other programs and things and scholarships and opportunities that kids are being made aware of so that they can be successful. Comments on anything of that from the board?
The only thing that I have is, so I sent out to all the board members some information on our board evaluation for June 17th, along with the superintendent evaluation. So I sent all that information over. If you have questions, reach out, let me know prior to that date so we can get any questions answered, and then we will go from there.
Yeah, so right now, the 9th, we put out an invitation or a notice, really, is that for 9:15 to canvass the vote. I will definitely be texting you throughout the night to let you know if that is going to be earlier or later. We can't start counting until 5 o'clock. There's a very restricted process we have to follow. The person who opens the vote can't count the vote. They move it on, take it out of the envelope so the person doesn't see who it was, because you can't know who's voting. And then it has to be counted twice. We do have 10 bodies, 10 people who are trained and from the Board of Elections will be here that night to train. We're going to use the conference room and the boardroom downstairs to spread out. But one of the other restrictions is that you're not moving the ballots unnecessarily too much, so they're secure and then they're brought into one location. So we thought we'd move the people and maybe not the ballots for the second count. So we're checking with the Board of Elections to make sure that would work. So pretty much like normal though, those people who've been through it, is that you come at that point to the administration building and we would have a meeting where we can do that. I think we'll keep it At the administration building, because that's where all the votes are, and it'll save some time. And if a lot of people come or the press come, we hope it'll be a nice night, and we'll open the windows in the boardroom, and they can kind of see in and process that and keep social distancing, because I really can't have more than 10 in that room to keep us, and that would be the board members pretty much, and we'd be full. So, but I got to rethink that. If I can, I can meet at the Alumni Center, and then people could spread out 6 feet apart in the seats, because there's plenty of seats there. So I'm planning on keeping it all here, though, because that's where everybody will be, and that's where the information will be. So I'll update you if that changes. Any questions on the election or the process or the ballots?
So I'm sorry, you said we are coming there?
Yes, you have to come Tuesday the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
It might be midnight, it might be 9 o'clock, which is what I'm shooting for, or I could say we're done early and you can come anytime after 7. So kind of keep your Tuesday night open. I would think not before 7 p.m. It's going to take us a while to count and double count and make sure we're ready. So I stuck with the 9 o'clock time. That gives us a good chunk of time.
Okay.
And that's a quick one. That's like, here's the results, and you canvass the votes. Mr. Montaro might have one other action item that we have to do before July, and it's real quick, 2 votes and you're done. It's not a public comment one and all that piece. So
that's okay. I'm excited to get out of the house. So.
Yeah.
You can hang out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know, isn't it? Getting there. How is everyone else doing with any calls about the budget or anything about that? I know the main thing's probably been the ballots.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we didn't get, Mr. Clester called because his position that for that data security, director of data security that I talked to you about was in the personnel, and he just called to say thank you for creating that position and his appointment there. So he would have been here, but obviously social distancing prevents us from that. So it's going to be a different world, and it's going to be, that's an important job going forward, because Mr. Halesko can tell you the tracking of data is endless, right? From who's got access to a phone number or social security, it's really,
yeah, it's becoming quite the big to-do.
Yeah. So, all right, so we're good, I think then. Mr. Montaro, you were close. You did a very good job speeding through that. I appreciate it. I almost wish there were a few more questions for you. Yeah.
Am I allowed to ask him one question? I did have.
Uh-oh.
I know. No, it's just let me find it. When will you know about that mid-year, if we're in trouble with that mid-year budget? You'll be giving the board warning?
Right. Well, the measurement periods, there's one coming up at the end of June. So I think they're going to look at the cash receipts on the state side. I know the last report they had, I think they were down 14% in terms of revenue. And then there's a measurement period again. I know there's definitely one in December. I don't.
I think it's October.
Is there one? Yeah. So I think there's 4 measurement periods, and then by December we'll have a pretty decent handle on the extent of.
But what Colleen's asking though is,
we're not going to be blindsided.
Yeah, in October, am I going to come to her and say we have to, cut $1 million, or we're going to be in the poorhouse? So no, we shouldn't have that level. And in talking with like the assemblyman today and the senator, and then going to the superintendent meeting afterwards, the 20% number that was thrown out there was really more of a number. I want a 10% raise, but you're going to settle for cost of living, but you go in high hoping to get something, more reasonable. So I don't think we'll see 20%. They're already coming down to 15% and 10%. The question we had is, what percent is that on? Because if that's on still the total state aid, that's a big chunk of money for all districts that are going to be in trouble. But if it's 20% on the pandemic adjustment, that's not as much, you know what I mean? And he's not real clear on that. So we sent them to Albany Packing with some questions today about, we need some answers. You know, we're fine to shift gears and turn around completely and do a 360 on, you know, when you tell us to, but we got to have some parameters so we know what we're heading into, you know? So they were very supportive of trying to get us those answers today. So they were going to do that.
In terms of when the state actually makes state aid payments, so they were good this year. I think they had taken out some borrowing, short-term borrowing to make our aid payments just recently. I know, Greg, you sent me a text on Friday. Like, you must have heard at one of the superintendent meetings, like, was the check coming? So we got this year's money. So I think at this point, you know, typically if you look at our cash flow early on in the year, it's the levy, you know, collecting the tax levy, and then the state aid starts kicking in. So I would believe that they probably want to see how the next 6 months or so in terms of cash receipts, like, is revenue rebounding, is the economy kind of you know, bringing us up to a certain level. And I would think they might wait till December, because who knows, in terms of like the federal side, you know, that could go on for some time in terms of, is the federal government going to provide the states with any additional support?
And they've been pretty good about putting in the hold harmless language in most things, which means we'll give you this money, but you can't take more away from anyone else. You got to kind of stop what you're doing. We want to put it back into the system, so you can't take more away. So we shouldn't see another huge cut beyond what he's talking about, this 15-20% and what it's going to be on for this year. Next year, all bets are off.
Right. And I would venture that they would wait a little bit. So unfortunately, yeah, you're starting in September. You still might not have any ideas, but we'll get some reports from the state controllers in terms of how much revenue is down. So that might give us a good idea. But then is he taking it from Medicaid? Is he taking it from school aid? That's the other question that would come up then at that point.
Yeah, how much federal funding bailout comes will be a big factor too. So
not a great answer, sorry.
No, it's okay. Just a little better understanding.
Yeah.
And the head of the federal government isn't a fan of our Democratic governor, so we always got to deal with that nonsense too, you know, where they play the party line. So that'll be interesting to see, sadly. So we thank you all for coming to our budget hearing. We hope, Mr. Huskell, can we ever find out if anyone watched?
We had up to 15 people at our peak, so it's been
that's about who comes, really. Yeah,
it's been transitioning up and down, so people have been popping in and out. I've been watching on a couple devices here just to see that everything is working, and knock on wood, everything seemed to go well.
Good. All right, and then it'll be on the webpage, and we'll put a link on Facebook and all the good things that they can go and watch it over the next couple of days.
Correct. It will take a little bit of time. Like, after we finish this meeting, it probably takes about a couple hours or hour and a half to transcode. So once it is completed, I'll push it up on Vimeo that people can go back and watch the recorded meeting.
Any hot spots for my Facebook Live tomorrow you want me to cover? Besides maybe school lunch?
Only if there's any more updates on graduation. I saw some posts today about people looking at the graduation section on the website and it not providing enough detail about.
Sadly, we have a meeting on Friday the 5th to put it all together and then send an invite out. But I think if I tell them tomorrow that that's coming early next week, that still gives them 3 weeks to plan for the 28th. So,
and
a lot of groups coming together.
I just have one future budget related question for Tony. And that's if we've ever studied doing the lunch program in-house, the cost benefit analysis of that, like Niagara Wheatfield does. I know they break even or make a small profit on that every so often. Obviously, this year's probably got several asterisks next to that. But, you know, I know we brought transportation in-house a few years ago after what I'm assuming we did a cost-benefit analysis of that.
We could look at that, but the contract that we have with our provider is break even. And really, if you look at the school lunch fund, it's been very stable. There's a fund balance there. It's a total separate entity in many respects.
Mm-hmm.
And bringing it in-house, being at a district that did run food service in-house, you will run into the issue of the management piece. It can be very difficult to find a very good food service director.
Plus, then all those employees that work for them are now so now what they're doing is when people call in sick and they don't come in, they'll say, "Are you fully staffed in Lockport? Send me Susie. I need help in NT." So you get someone to come and help you. You can do those types of shares when it's, you know, like our bus transportation department, when there's no bus drivers, enough bus drivers, and then they're sick or something, and then we're doubling up runs. You're going to have a lot more of that if we're not hiring really healthy people, I guess is what I'm going to say, you know, because, and that through the problems we've had with this one, it's getting the workers. That's the problem, you know, even there.
Well, when I found out about it, you know, I asked the question about retention of employees, and they actually, and again, I know contracts always get in the way of things based on what's existing, and obviously, if you were to do something like this, you'd have to find out where they would fall, because these are all employees coming on our books, not another company's. But they actually utilize some of their I believe school bus aides that are part-time on the buses as lunch monitors and things of that nature to offer those employees full-time benefits. And then they're seeing increased employee retention amongst either drivers or aides that are, you know, doing that, as long as it doesn't interfere with their primary job, which is the runs. Obviously, there's a lot of contractual stuff that goes with that, and I know that. But I just figured I'd ask if we've ever done the study in the first place and see if it's something feasible for down the road, that if it is beneficial to the district, potentially exploring it.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely could do a strength, weakness, opportunity, threat type analysis, and you know, look at that. I would caution, though, that there's some definite pitfalls with school food service, and right now it has no impact on the general fund, and that's the way you want to keep it. Where districts get in trouble is when that self-op is not performing well. I know Frontier, just as recent as 5 years ago, they had a deficit. They were running a deficit, and it was costing their general fund to the tune of $250,000 a year that had to support the school lunch program, and they were self-op, and it was not a good situation, because all that ends up doing is cutting student programs. So there definitely are some you know, considerations in that respect, but it can be looked at. It wouldn't save us money in any way, though, because that is a separate fund. Just on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can run it, but we do offer the drivers now to come in and be lunch monitors and stuff, and some have taken advantage of it and some don't, you know, so I fear for the staffing piece of it, but yeah, we can do a comparison.
Thank you.
Any other questions or anything for the good of the order?
I'd like to just give a shout out to everybody for rounding out the year, first of all. And so, yay!
Yeah.
And also to Greg and Tony and Pat and everybody for pulling in all the extra hours to keep us looking like little things are big things. So thank you all.
Yeah.
I also want to thank Eric with a very full heart for all of the work that you've been doing. And it goes without saying that we just owe you a debt of gratitude for the line of service that you've chosen. So thank you, Eric.
Yes.
And also two real quick last things, Matt Kennedy and Colleen, you guys are amazing, because I looked at the New York State School Board Association Area Directors newsletter, and Matt, in a really short amount of time, you've earned like 75 credits. I don't even know how you get there for doing all of that extra professional work. And Colleen, you have 150. So my hat is off, and thank you so very, very much, because that has to take a lot of extra time, and the knowledge you bring to the board, I'm just really grateful. So thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, yes, thank you for everything. How's everything on your end? Everything's flipped upside down, right?
Yeah, thank you for that, Krista, and thanks. Yeah, it's, for those of you, some of the people, if they're listening, don't know, we have a SWAT team that is both Erie and Niagara County, City of Tonawanda and North Tonawanda. So we've responded and worked the last 4 days every night in Buffalo or Niagara Falls, and so the local NT, which includes John Sapkowski, our SRO. We've been out there every night in the different cities, and it's definitely been a crazy experience. And so thanks for your support. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's a crazy time, but thankfully things have been relatively quiet in NT, and hope it stays that way.
Well, it only takes one or two. That's the sad part, because the idea of a protest or a peaceful protest is never a bad thing for people to be able to exercise their voice. But, if I'm going to a peaceful protest with spray cans and my spray paint in my can, I'm not really going to be peaceful. You know what I mean? I'm going to cause trouble. So I encourage everybody to make sure their voice is heard, but not by the taking lives or hurting or defaming property, because you're hurting us. Those are us, they're store owners, their neighbors, their friends, their colleagues. And yeah, it's just too bad that people get so upset, and there's bad people in the world that upset them. We should all be a little bit more caring as we go forward. So let's keep that in mind.
If I could just add one more thing for us to think about. One of the things that's been most surprising is the groups of protesters throughout Falls and Buffalo, and it's been a lot of young kids. I mean, and unbelievable. I don't know if the number is half, if you have 200 or what, but it just seems like I've seen anything from 10-year-olds to a huge number of high school age kids. And so it kind of made me think, like, what do our kids think, or just what's that perspective from not like young adults, 18 and 20-year-olds, but I'm talking high school age kids. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, maybe as we go back to normal, and this is obviously something that's really impacting the youth throughout Niagara County. I'm sure NT is, not alone on that. So maybe as we start next school year, we kind of dive into that and see how our students are feeling, because it was surprising to see that many young student age kids on the front lines and very, very angry. So maybe that's something we should think about moving forward.
Well, and you know what? They've got time on their hands right now. They're not in school like they would have been, and they're not preparing and studying for exams. Not that I'm saying it wouldn't happen, they don't have beliefs and things, but like some of these things I heard of, and then I heard like that there were kids there at like 17 years old. I was talking to Joel, I'm like, how would I even know, my son, like, how do you even know where to find out that meet me in Buffalo, we're going to protest? Like, where do you go to get that information? You know what I mean? And, but that's what they're on. They're online. They're on social media. That's, that's what their world is. And so they're seeing all that. And then they have that belief. So they go maybe with a good intention, but they have to stay in that mind frame. So thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe. And I'll keep you posted as we go through and what's happening with the ballots.
Right. So without anything else, we just need a motion to adjourn our regular meeting and our public hearing.
So moved.
Zach, and second?
Second.
Eric, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Okay, I will keep you posted on graduation and ballots as we move forward. Anything else, give me a text, okay?
Thank you,
Stay
Greg.
safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.